Hare Krishna, Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So all of you have now witnessed the transcendental Abhishek ceremony for Sri Prabhupada, and we would like to now invite His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj to kindly give us class on Sri Prabhupada's appearance day. Hare Krishna.
Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. I am very, very happy to be in the midst of all of you in Singapore. It has been quite a while since I have had your association, and therefore I'm extremely pleased that I got this opportunity to be with all of you, especially on such an important and holy occasion. Thanks to His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu, who invited me to come here today and speak something on Srila Prabhupada on his holy appearance day. I do hope that all of you are safe and well in the midst of this pandemic, and that you have also utilized this opportunity for making advancement in the path of Krishna consciousness. I also hope that you had a very nice festival yesterday for Janmashtami, even though it was online. The deities of Radha Madan Mohan, I had darshan just now, are very beautiful, and you are all very fortunate to be able to serve them. It was a very nice Abhishek ceremony. I saw only a few minutes of it. Okay, so I've got a message that you can't hear me. Can you hear me better now? I have increased it to the maximum at my end. Okay, Hare Krishna. So today is Srila Prabhupada's appearance day anniversary, significantly just the day after Janmashtami. For great personalities who are exalted and pure devotees of Lord Krishna, the service to them is as good as the service to Krishna. Srila Rupa Goswami, in his verse Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhyanavritam Anukulyena Krishnanushilanam Bhaktiruttama, in which he defines what bhakti is, explains that bhakti has to be to Krishna. It has to be rendered in a favorable spirit. And it has to be without any selfish motivations of karma or jnana. And when we speak of Krishna, it is explained that Krishna includes his expansions like Ram, Narasimha, etc. It includes also all those personalities and objects that are connected to him in devotion. That includes Tulsi, Ganga, Yamuna, etc. And of course, above all, the Vaishnavas. And especially those who are great Vaishnavas, elevated, pure devotees of the Lord, Acharyas, are extremely dear to Krishna. And therefore, our service to them is also very much a part of Krishna consciousness. We cannot have devotional service to Krishna without serving his pure, exalted devotees. So, therefore, in our movement in ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada's position is very, very special, all the more because he is also the founder Acharya of our movement. Of course, the movement is age-old. It is coming from time immemorial, and specifically, Srila Prabhupada has inaugurated the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world in the modern times. So he was like that general that was predicted some centuries ago who would appear and spread the Sankirtan movement everywhere. Now, generally, when a person is born, we do not know what kind of life that person is going to lead in future. And if someone is destined for greatness, that is known only to very few people. For a great devotee, the disappearance day is very important because by then we know what that personality has accomplished. However, when that person has demonstrated already what his level of pure devotion is, his sacrifice to Krishna, then the appearance day also becomes very important for us to celebrate. So today, I would like to honor and remember Srila Prabhupada with all of you by singing this song that he wrote when he was on the ship as it was flying to America from India. And that is called Prayer Unto the Lotus Feet of Lord Krishna. And then as I sing that, I will say a few things about these prayers. So we will have it on the screen. Before that, I will just say a brief word, a few words about it as described in the songbook, Vaishnava songbook. So this song was written on board the ship Jaladuta, in which he traveled, on September 13th, 1965, exactly 1 month after he departed from the shores of India, from Kolkata port. Friday, September 10, 1965, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, Srila Prabhupada, on a steamer bound for America, wrote in his ship diary, quote, "Today the ship is plying very smoothly. I feel today better, but I am feeling separation of Sri Vrindavan and my lords, Sri Govinda, Gopinath, Radha Damodar. My solace is Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, in which I am tasting the nectar of Lord Chaitanya's Leela. I have left Bharata Bhumi just to execute the order of Sri Bhakti-siddhānta Saraswatī in pursuance of Lord Chaitanya's order. I have no qualification, but I have taken up the risk just to carry out the order of His divine grace. I depend fully on their mercy so far away from Vrindavan. 3 days later, in this mood of pure devotion, His divine grace composed the following prayer. There is a line before this as well. Can you also put that up on the screen? There is a verse before this. Krsna Tava Punya Habe Bhai. Yes, thank you. So I will sing the entire first verse, the Krsna Tava Punya Habe Bhai, and after I have finished it, you may all kindly repeat it in your respective places. Krsna Tava Punya Habe Bhai, e-puṇya koribe, jabe rādhārāṇī sukhi habe, dhruva ati boli tomā. Krsna Tava Punya Habe Bhai, e-puṇya koribe, jabe rādhārāṇī sukhi habe, dhruva ati boli tomā. śrī-siddhānta saraswatī śacī-suta priya ati. kṛṣṇa-sebāya jaratulanaye. Se mohānta-guru jagatera madhye uru.
Sahi se mohānta-guru jagatera madhye uru.
kṛṣṇa-bhakti de thai thai.
kṛṣṇa-bhakti de thai thai.
Tara ichha balavana paschate thana thana.
Tara ichha balavana paschate thana thana.
Hoye jate gaurangera naam.
Hoye jate gaurangera naam.
Prithivithe nagarade asamudra nada nadi.
Prithivite nagaradi asamudra nada nadi.
Sakale bole Krishna naam.
Sakale bole Krishna Ram.
It's Naam, by the way, not Ram. Sakale bole Krishna naam.
Sakale bole Krishna Nam.
Krsna Tava Punya Habe Bhai, e-puṇya koribe, jabe rādhārāṇī khusī habe, dhruva ati boli tomā.
Krsna Tava Punya Habe
Bhai, e-puṇya koribe, jabe rādhārāṇī khusī habe, dhruva ati boli tomā. This verse, the refrain, you may kindly sing after I have finished the whole refrain and the whole verse. Okay? Tahale ananda hoye, tabe hoye digvijaya.
Tahala ananda hoye, tabe hoye digvijaya.
Chaitanya kripa atishaye.
Chaitanya ye kripa atishaye.
Maya dushta jata dukhi, জগতে সবাই সুখী।
দুষ্ট যত দুঃখী জগতে সবাই সুখী।
বৈষ্ণবের ইচ্ছা পূর্ণ হয়,
বৈষ্ণবের ইচ্ছা পূরণ হয়।
সেই কার্য যে করিবারে আজ্ঞা যদি দিল মোরে,
সে কাজ করিবারে আজ্ঞা যদি দিল মোরে।
যোগ্য নাহি অতি দীনহীনা,
যোগ্য নাহি অতি দীনহীনা।
তাই সে তোমার কৃপা মাগিতেছি অনুরূপা,
তাই সে তোমারা কৃপা মাগিতেছি অনুরূপা।
আজি তুমি সবার প্রবীণা,
আজি তবে সবার প্রবীণা।
কৃষ্ণ তব পুণ্য হবে ভাই, এ পুণ্য করিবে যবে রাধারানী খুশি হবে, ধ্রুব অতি বলি তোমা তাই। কৃষ্ণ তব পুণ্য হবে
হবে
এ
পুণ্য করিবে যাবে রাধারানী খুশি হবে, ধ্রুবাতি বলি তোমা তাই।
তোমার সে শক্তি পেলে গুরু সেবায় বস্তু মিলে,
তোমার সে শক্তি পেলে গুরু সেবা বস্তু মিলে।
জীবন সার্থক যদি হয়,
জীবন সার্থক যদি হয়।
সেই সে সেবা পাইলে তাহলে সুখী হলে,
সেই সে সেবা পাইলে তাহলে সুখী হবে।
তব সঙ্গ ভাগ্যতে মিলয়,
তব সঙ্গ ভাগ্যতে মিলয়।
एवं जनम निपतितं प्रभवाहि कूपे,
एवं जनम
निपतितं प्रभवाहि कूपे, कामाभिकामं मुनयः प्रपतन् प्रसंगात्,
कामाभिकाममनूय प्रपतं प्रसंगात्।
कृत्वात्मसात् सुरसिणा भगवन् गृहीत,
कृत्वात्मसा सुरसिना भगवान् गृहीता।
सोऽहं कथं नु विसृजे तव भृत्य सेवाम्,
सोऽहं कथं न विसृजे तव भृत्य सेवाम्।
कृष्ण तव पुण्य হবে ভাই, এ পুণ্য করিবে যবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে, ধ্রুব অতি বলি তোমা তাই।
कृष्णा तवा पुण्य habe bhai, e punya koribe jabe rādhārāṇī khusī habe, dhruva ati boli tomā tai।
তুমি মোর চির সাথী ভুলিয়া মায়ার লাঠি,
তুমি মোর চির সাথী বুঝিয়া মায়ার লাঠি।
খাইয়াছি জন্ম জন্মান্তরে,
খাইয়াছি জন্ম জন্মান্তরে।
আজি পুনঃ সেই এই সুযোগ যদি হয় যোগ যোগ,
আজি পুনঃ সুযোগ যদি হয় যোগ যোগ,
তবে পারি তুহে মিলিবারে,
তবে পারি তুনে মিলিবারে।
তোমার মিলনে ভাই আবার সে সুখ পাই,
तुम्हारा मिलने भाई आবার আসে সুখ পাই
গোচারণে ঘুরি দিন ভোর
গোচারানে ঘুরি দিন ভোরা
কত বনে ছুটা ছুটি বনে খাই লুটা লুটি
কত বানে ছুটা ছুটি বানে খাই লুটা লুটি
সেই দিন কবে হবে মোর
এই দিন কবে হবে মোর
কৃষ্ণ তব পুণ্য হবে ভাই এ পুণ্য করিবে যবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে ধ্রুবা অতি বলি তোমা তাই
কৃষ্ণ তবে পুণ্যে হবে ভাই এ পুণ্য করিবে যাবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে ধ্রুবাতি বলে তুমি তাই
আজি সেই সুবিধানে তোমার স্মরণ ভেলা
আজি সে সুবিধান তোমার স্মরণ বেলা
বড় আশা ডাকিলাম তাই
বড় আশা ডাকিলাম তাই
আমি তোমার নিত্য দাস তাই করি এত আশা
আমি তোমার নিত্য দাস তাই করে তো আশা
তুমি বিনা অন্য গতি নাই
তুমি বিনা অন্য গতি নাই
কৃষ্ণ তব পুণ্য হবে ভাই এ পুণ্য করিবে যবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে ধ্রুব অতি বলি তোমা তাই
কৃষ্ণ তবা পুণ্য হবে ভাই এ পুণ্য করিবে যাবে রাধা রানী খুশি হবে ধ্রুবাতি বলে তোমা তাই
I emphatically say to you, O brothers, can we have the previous one, the slide that was before? That was a better one. Yes. Can we continue with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Translation. I emphatically say to you, O brothers, you will obtain good fortune from the Supreme Lord Krishna only when Srimati Radharani becomes pleased with you. So, Srila Prabhupada, I will actually speak on each verse as we go on. So, can we please keep it on the previous one? Yes, thank you. So, Srila Prabhupada has written this or composed this song in the midst of his journey to America. And as he was framing, he was remembering the mercy of Srimati Radharāṇī. Because in our philosophy, the mercy of Srimati Radharāṇī is crucial. Srimati Radharāṇī, as we all know, is the tender-hearted feminine counterpart of Krishna, to use Srila Prabhupada's words. So, when Srimati Radharāṇī recommends somebody to Krishna, Srila Prabhupada explains elsewhere that Sri Krishna cannot deny. So, Srimati Radharāṇī is the embodiment and the perfection of Krishna consciousness, of bhakti. Therefore, in the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada says that in Vrindavan, people glorify Radharāṇī, and everywhere we will find glorification of Srimati Radharāṇī. We will find it on the trees, on the walls, everywhere written, Jai Shri Radhe or Radhārāṇī. Like this, you will find everywhere the glories of Srimati Radharāṇī. So when we begin our devotional service, and even as we continue our devotional service, and for every important activity, it is very important to petition the mercy of Srimati Rādhārāṇī and of course Krishna as well. But before we reach there is the mercy of the spiritual master, who is the representative of Lord Balaram, and he's also the representative of Radha and Krishna. So, Srila Prabhupada is now invoking the remembrance of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswati Thakur. So he says here, śrī-siddhānta saraswatī śacī-suta priya ati. So Srila Siddhanta, Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswati Thakur is very priya, very dear, ati priya to śacī-suta, who is Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu, the son of Shachi Devi. And kṛṣṇa-sebāya jara tulanai. And when it comes to the service to Lord Krishna, there is no comparison, there is no parallel to the way he serves Lord Krishna. So, Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswati Thakur, who is very dear to Lord Gauranga, the son of Mother Sachi, is unparalleled in his service to the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Say mohānta-guru. Mohānta means very great. So he is that great spiritual master. Jagatira madhye uru. And amongst, in the whole world, he is such a great, exalted spiritual master. kṛṣṇa-bhakti dai thai. And he bestows intense devotion to Krishna in different places all through the world. So this vision or this strong desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswati Thakur to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world came from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then after that through Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur had said about Prithibite Ache Jota Nagoradi Gram Sarvata Prachar Hoibe Moranam. So this was the prophecy made by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and in this prophecy we also understand was his desire, his deep desire. Why did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu not do it? Why did Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Lord Krishna himself, do this task? It was easy for him, after all, as the Supreme Lord, he could have achieved anything. But the reason is that he wanted to leave this task to the great devotees who would come later down in the parampara. And he was preparing the ground through so many great acharyas, the 6 Goswamis, and then Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Pandit, Srinivas Acharya, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidya Bhushana, Gaur Kishore Jagannath Das Babaji, Gaur Kishore Das Babaji, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswati Thakur, and finally His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So the actual task, the actual glory of spreading Krishna consciousness at different places throughout the world was reserved for our Srila Prabhupada. Now this is not an ordinary thing. Even though the desire had been there, attempts had been made, but that final task could be accomplished by Srila Prabhupada. Such a magnificent thing to remember about Srila Prabhupada. Of course, Srila Prabhupada understands that what he was able to do was because of the causeless mercy of the Guru Parampara, specifically his spiritual master, and ultimately of Radha and Krishna and Sri Gauranga Mahaprabhu. But just let us consider on this holy day of his appearance, that it was he who was chosen by the Guru Parampara and their lordships to be the one who would be the instrument to actually spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. And this vision of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was also there in Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur. And before that, in Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami started the Vishwa Vaishnava Raj Sabha. Vishwa means the whole world. So he started this particular Sangha, which was meant for having Vaishnavas who are worldwide. Even though Srila Jiva Goswami did not travel, he remained in Braj. But we can see the conception, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had desired that the holy names should resonate all over the world in every town and village. And Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur also started this Vishwa Vaishnava Raja Sabha. So where he would gather devotees. And even at that time, there were no devotees from other countries, even from other provinces except Bengal and Orissa. But Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur had this, not only the vision, he had the clear conviction that it would happen one day. And he said actually that when will that day come when the High Court judges will sit there with the tilak? And when will that day come when the Europeans, the Germans, French, the English, the Americans will all gather together in Mayapur and chant Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari? So he had a very clear understanding that this would happen one day. And he inaugurated the task in the modern day, in the 20th century, actually the late 19th century. Actually, in the year in which Srila Prabhupada was born, 1896, that was precisely the year that Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur sent out his book, Life and Teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the McGill University Library in Canada. So this was the first time in recorded history that a publication of this sort was dispatched to another country for the sake of propagating the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur very much had this in mind. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was very largely preoccupied with spreading the movement in India, because during Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur's time, the movement was largely restricted to Bengal and Orissa. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his son and his Shiksha disciple, and also his grand Diksha disciple, he established the Gaudiya Math and established 64 branches in all over India. Now, no mean task, no small task that, a phenomenal task. In a short span of time to set up 64 temples all over India. And of course, his headquarters was in Calcutta, and he chose to depart from the world in Calcutta because that was the battlefield as far as he was concerned. So he sent out, despite all this hard endeavor of setting up these 64 centers, he realized the importance of sending devotees outside of India. So he sent 3 of his disciples to London, and they went there and they stayed there for a while and they returned. They were not able to attain much success because the people did not seem to be interested, because it was very hard to convince people of the philosophy and also of the need to follow the regulative practices that devotees were expected to do. So they could not achieve much success. They did some preaching and they came back eventually. But this task of finally going out was left to Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktivedanta Swami, as he is known in the Gaudiya Math. In the Gaudiya Math, Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, is known as Swami Maharaj. So, just imagine this desire of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He had the power to spread it everywhere, but he knew this very special disciple, Abhay Charanaravinda Das, he would spread, he would succeed. You know, when he was a Grihastha at that time, in his Grihastha Leela, he was performing extraordinary services. Even in Bombay, when he came here for business purposes, the sannyasi disciples of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, like Sridhar Swami and so on, they would engage him in many services, and he would do many wonderful things there. All his god brothers were very pleased with him. And they would sometimes tell Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur about this Abhay Charanaravinda, Abhay Charan Day. And they would say that, please ask him to leave his business and join so that he can serve. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to say, no, let him be. A time will come when he will do wonderful things. So because of his pure devotion, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur understood, that Srila Prabhupada, our Srila Prabhupada, would do some extraordinary things in the future. So he said, the time will come, don't worry. Because Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had noted Srila Prabhupada, even in Radha Kund, way back, even before Srila Prabhupada actually formally accepted initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was speaking on the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many of his disciples had gone to for parikrama in the various places, but Abhay Charan, as he was called at that time, he preferred to sit down and hear Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who spoke for 30 days on this one verse. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta noted, Abhay Charan likes to hear. And this was such an important qualification for Srila Prabhupada, because he had faith in his spiritual master and in his words. And he sat there to hear the transcendental messages of Srimad Bhagavatam, because he knew that that was more important than going out to have darshan of various places. Of course, going to these holy places is a very important part of our Krishna conscious life. And whenever possible, we can try to do it. But more important than that is to hear the messages of the Lord and his great devotees. So therefore, say mohānta-guru jagatera madhe uru kṛṣṇa-bhakti dai thai thai. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a mohānta-guru, the great guru, who bestowed intense devotion to Krishna. And his main instrument to actually fulfill this desire was his great disciple, Abhay Charanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. So in the next verse, now, we have Tar Ichha Balavan Paschatete Than Than. Tar Ichha Balavan means his, referring to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, his desire is very strong, Balavan. Paschatete Than Than. Hoy Jate Gaurangera Naam. So because his desire is very strong, the holy names of Lord Gauranga will spread throughout the countries of the Western world. Prithibite Nagaradi, that means all over the world, Nagar Adi, in all the different cities, Asamudra Nada Nadi, across the oceans, across the rivers and streams, Nada and Nadi, Sakali Loy Krishna Nam, everyone will chant the holy name of Krishna. So, from Srila Prabhupada's point of view, he was convinced that this would happen because it was the strong desire of his spiritual master. And he was bent upon fulfilling that desire. So we see that in Srila Prabhupada's achievements, one of the most important things we note is his strong faith and conviction in the order and his commitment to the order of his spiritual master. When Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswatī Thakur told him to go abroad and preach the message of Lord Chaitanya, Prabhupada was in the Grihastha Leela at that time. So it was not possible for him to immediately leave his family, his small children, his business, and all of a sudden go to the Western countries. That was not possible for him at that time. But he did not forget. And for many decades, he kept this flame, this desire flame burning in his heart. And when the right time came, many decades later, he actually fulfilled that desire. So such a strong commitment to the order of his spiritual master. In fact, the very first time that Srila Prabhupada, as a young man, met Srila Bhaktisiddhānta on the terrace of the building at 1 Ultadanga Junction, immediately Srila Bhaktisiddhānta Saraswatī Thakur told him, "You are a young, educated man. You should preach the message of Gauranga Mahaprabhu in the English language in the Western countries." So right there and then, at the very first meeting, he got his whole life's mission. And it was only so many decades later that he was able to actually fulfill. So this is something inspiring for us. We should try to fulfill the orders that we receive from our spiritual masters. Sometimes it may not be possible to immediately fulfill, but we should keep in mind, and we should do it at the right opportunity. We should never let it go or take it casually. So Srila Prabhupada is demonstrating to us how we should take the orders of the spiritual master very seriously. The next, tahale ananda hoy, tabe hoy digvijay, chaitanyara kripa atishay. As the vast mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu conquers all directions, a flood of transcendental ecstasy will certainly cover the land. Maya dushta jato dukhi, jagate sabai sukhi, Vaishnavera ichha purna hoy. When all the sinful, miserable living entities become happy, the Vaishnava's desire is then fulfilled. So, the Vaishnavas, they are paradukha dukhi. They want to see the miserable living entities in this world happy. And it is not just that they have this compassion and this desire to make the unhappy people happy. They also have the spiritual understanding of what can make people actually happy. So good intention is not sufficient. One needs the proper spiritual knowledge and the proper spiritual empowerment by dint of sincere spiritual practices. So Srila Prabhupada was empowered. His godbrother Srila Sridhar Swami once said that he's like a Shakti-avesh avatar, not in the sense that he's Krishna or God. This was an idea that Srila Prabhupada was very careful to not take root in ISKCON, but in the sense that he was empowered by Krishna to do this most wonderful act, which nobody had been able to do so far. And this was because he wanted the suffering conditioned souls to become very blissful. Can we have the next verse? Sei karya je koribare agya jodi dilo more yogya nahi ati dinahina. She karja je koribare agya jodi dilo more. Although my Guru Maharaj ordered me to accomplish this mission, I am not worthy of it to do it. I am very fallen and insignificant. Yogya nahi ati dinahina. So Srila Prabhupada is displaying the proper mood for a preacher. You know, even though Srila Prabhupada was from all points of view exceptionally qualified to do this, still he felt himself unfit for the task. You see, just look at it. Srila Prabhupada was an all-rounder when it came to all the skills and abilities required for Krishna conscious preaching. He was a pure devotee of Krishna. He was very well versed in all the scriptural teachings and conclusions. Number 3, he was an excellent communicator. He could speak effectively. He could communicate very properly and nicely in English as well as in Bengali and Hindi. Number 4, he was a very good singer, which is a very essential part of our movement. He could also play all the musical instruments like the harmonium, the kartal, the mridanga. He could do everything. He knew the practical skills of devotional service. He was a good manager. He was a good leader. He knew how to cook. He knew how to worship the deities and teach others how to do it. He knew how to perform the sacrifices. He knew how to deal with people at different levels, at all kinds of people. So basically, he had everything that it took to be an exceptional preacher. But he felt that he was not qualified. This is the mood of a preacher. This humility is what was so important. Because ultimately, you know, the qualifications, the qualities that somebody, the abilities that somebody may have are ultimately given by Krishna. So if one becomes proud thinking that those abilities are mine and I should get the credit for it, then that is not a spiritual consciousness. But we see here in Srila Prabhupada's life what beautiful consciousness he had. Despite being exceptionally qualified, he was feeling that I'm not qualified. So therefore, when we feel so meek and humble, what do? We beg for the mercy. And that is what he did. Tai se tomare kripa, magitechi anurupa, aji tumi sabara pravina. Therefore, O Lord, remember, this is the prayer to the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. That is the title of this song. So therefore, O Lord, now I am begging for your mercy so that I may become worthy, for you are the wisest and most experienced of all. So whenever we are about to embark on an important task in Krishna consciousness, whatever it may be giving a lecture, it may be singing a song, it may be speaking a few words to someone about Krishna, it may be worshipping the deities or doing anything, we should always pray for the mercy of Lord Krishna, as Srila Prabhupada is telling us here to do by his own example. Then in the next verse, tomā se shakti pele guru sevāya vastu mile jivana sarthaka yadi hoy. If you bestow your power by serving the spiritual master, one attains the absolute truth. One's life becomes successful. Sei se seva paile tahale sukhi hole tobe sanga bhagyate miloy. If that service is obtained, one becomes happy and gets your association due to good fortune. So here, Srila Prabhupada is illustrating a very important principle, and that is that by the mercy of Krishna, one gets Guru, and by the mercy of Guru, one gets Krishna. So this kind of a reciprocal relationship is very important. When the desire is there in our heart to obtain Krishna, then Krishna sends us the right spiritual master, and by following the instructions of the spiritual master, we get the mercy, and we are able to attain service to Krishna, and ultimately we may become pure devotees at some point. So interestingly, in this prayer to Lord Krishna, Srila Prabhupada is begging the Lord for service to his spiritual master. Please allow me to serve my spiritual master very nicely. This is the prayer he's giving to Krishna. So this is, and it is because of this faith and because of this proper mood, Guru and Krishna together, that Srila Prabhupada became very successful. Can we have the next two verses? Okay. And this is, of course, a famous verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, spoken by Prahlad Maharaj, the 28th verse of the 9th chapter in the 7th canto. And the translation by Prabhupada is as follows. My dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of my association with material desires, one after another, I was gradually falling into a blind well full of snakes, following the general populace. But your servant Narad Muni kindly accepted me as his disciple and instructed me how to achieve this transcendental position. Therefore, my first duty is to serve him. How could I leave his service? So in this important verse, Prahlad Maharaj is speaking about the glories of serving the great devotees like Narad Muni and the spiritual master. Narad Muni was the spiritual master for Prahlad Maharaj. So similarly, Srila Prabhupada is remembering this and begging the Lord to be allowed to serve his own spiritual master and please him and fulfill his instructions. You see, just remember how bold Srila Prabhupada was. It was merely on the, I beg your pardon, I think there is some problem in the connection. My battery is low. If you just excuse me, I beg your pardon. Sure. Current time. Sorry, the current has gone here, so we have a little problem, but I'm back. So, Srila Prabhupada was so convinced of the need for following of the spreading of Krishna consciousness everywhere, and he was so determined to follow his spiritual master's order that he took such a big risk at such an advanced age. You know, he was 69 when he left the shores of India. In fact, he was just a few days short of his birthday. And when the ship left from Kolkata and it traveled in the Bay of Bengal to Colombo and then onwards to Cochin, it was in the city of Cochin in Kerala that he celebrated his 70th birthday. And he was frail. And shortly after that, he had 2 heart attacks in the ocean when the ship was flying. Even when the ship left the shores of Kolkata, he started experiencing enormous bouts of seasickness and vomiting, dizziness. He could hardly eat anything. And somehow or the other, he was able to manage this long journey by ship. He had never before been on an overseas journey on ship like this before. So determined was he, and such a risk he took. In fact, when he went to Sumati Morarji, who was the proprietor of the Scindia Steam Navigation Company, which was, excuse me, There's some problem with the current, so I just have to. Sure. Sorry for these technical problems here. So Srimati Sumati Morarji, she finally gave him a ticket, a free ticket to go on the Jaladuta. But it was not an easy task. It took quite some convincing, and Srila Prabhupada convinced her very nicely. And in the course of the discussions, she told Srila Prabhupada that, Swamiji, do you know what my secretaries are saying? They are saying Swamiji is so old, when he goes to America, he will die there. He will not come back alive because it is so cold in America and he's so old and frail. How will he survive there? But Srila Prabhupada was completely determined that this is the order of my spiritual master and I must fulfill it, and Krishna will protect me. So this was his determination. This was his conviction. This was his courage and his boldness, that at a ripe old age, he could take such a step. He had only 40 rupees in his pocket, equivalent to about $7 at that time. And in his own words, that amount would be spent in just a few hours in a city like New York. So therefore, he remembers here the example of Prahlad praying to the Lord that he may serve Narad Muni nicely. Can we have the next verses? Tumi mora chira sathi bhuliya mayar lathi khai yachi janma janmam tare. O Lord Krishna, you are my eternal companion. Forgetting you, I have suffered the kicks of Maya birth after birth. Aji punas ei sujoga jodi hoy joga joga tobe puri pari tujhe mulibare. If today the chance comes to meet you occurs again, then I will surely be able to rejoin you. Now, Srila Prabhupada is going deep into his Vrindavan meditations. Remember that he's on the ship now. And the oceans, anything can happen. He's already had 2 heart attacks. So he doesn't even know whether he will survive the journey all the way to America. And so at this time, he's also immersing himself in thoughts of Krishna. He's remembering his beloved Vrindavan Dham. You see, remember that he left Vrindavan at that age. Mostly people who are living there, the devotees, would not like to leave Vrindavan at that time. They would like to just remain there. Who would like to leave Vrindavan when you have such a comfortable, not so comfortable, it was just one small room, but from an ascetics point of view, it was all that he needed. In the Radha Damodar temple, he had a nice room there. He could do his writing, his bhajan, he could go and take bath in the Yamuna. Vrindavan and these beautiful temples, such a nice devotional atmosphere. And it wasn't even as commercialized as it is today. Not that many people used to come there. So he would have been perfectly comfortable there. He could have left for the spiritual world after living a fulfilling life there. But he left the physical Vrindavan just so that he could fulfill the orders of his spiritual master. But he was carrying Vrindavan with him in the heart. And he was going to establish outposts of Vrindavan everywhere. So he was carrying Vrindavan in the heart, and here on the ship he was remembering Vrindavan. And in the next verse also, he says, he expresses a similar mood of being in Vrindavan with Krishna. I'll read only the translation. Oh dear friend, in your company, I will experience great joy once again. In the early morning, I will wander about the cowherd pastures and fields. Running and frolicking in the many forests of Braja, I will roll on the ground in spiritual ecstasy. Oh, when will that day be mine? Seidin kobe hobe more. So therefore he is now remembering Vrindavan because he was getting great solace. So you see, when we are also in difficulty, in trouble, as indeed we will all be at all times, this material world is full of suffering. So we should remember the orders of our spiritual master. We should remember all the teachings that we have heard from the scriptures. We should remember, we should chant the holy names of the Lord. And we should also remember Vrindavan and Krishna in Vrindavan. That will give us great solace. Whatever be the situation, whatever be the difficulty in our life, we must remember that Krishna is playing the flute in Vrindavan. He is with the cowherd boys grazing the calves and cows. He is with the gopis doing the Rasa Leela. He is giving pleasure to Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yashoda. So these visions of Vrindavan we can keep in our mind. And immediately we will feel great relief and transcendental bliss. And finally, the last verse. Today, the remembrance of you came to me in a very nice way because I have a great longing. I call to you. I am your eternal servant and therefore I desire your association so much. O Lord Krishna, except for you, there is no other means of success. So this way he was intensely and deeply calling out to Krishna. So this calling out to Krishna is the business of a devotee. We call out to Krishna for mercy, and then we share this mood and spirit with others in the world by giving them Krishna consciousness. So they may also call out to Krishna in this way. And if the whole world simply calls out to Krishna like this in devotion, then the whole world can be converted into the spiritual world. So on Srila Prabhupada's appearance day today, let us all pray at his lotus feet that he may shower his mercy upon us so that we may also have that faith and that devotion to call out to Krishna like this. That we may also have even a particle of his humility, of his conviction, his courage, his boldness, his determination to go out and spread Krishna consciousness everywhere. I think I have overstepped my time, so I will stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Prabhupada appearance day celebrations ki jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So please spread this message of pure devotion to Srila Prabhupada or to Lord Krishna as given by Srila Prabhupada everywhere in Singapore and wherever you may be. You're fortunate to have the wonderful and able guidance of His Grace Devakinandan Prabhu. Please continue on, build up a very nice community of devotees, live together lovingly, unitedly in great devotion. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.